On Halloween night, a black woman walked aimlessly back to her small diner, which was about to close down under the weight of crushing debt. Suddenly, a trembling voice cut, "Grandpa, I'm so hungry. Are we going to die?" She saw a little girl, no more than 8, shivered in a torn dress beside a frail old man. Moved by compassion, the woman approached and invited them inside. The old man hesitated, but when he saw his granddaughter clutching her empty stomach, he accepted. After that night, they would never have known that their lives would change forever. Before we dive deeper into this story, tell us where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more heartwarming stories every day. The neon sign of Harper's Kitchen flickered against the October darkness, casting uneven shadows on the empty street below. Outside, jack-o'-lanterns sat on stoops, their carved faces grinning in the cold autumn air. Inside, Diana Harper sat hunched over a mountain of unpaid bills, rent, utilities, suppliers who had stopped calling because they knew she had nothing left. "I've let you down, Mama," she whispered to the empty restaurant. "I've let this place die." The silence pressed down around her, broken only by the wheeze of an ancient refrigerator. Across the street, Dominic's bistro glowed with warm light and laughter spilling through its polished windows, a cruel reminder of everything Harper's Kitchen used to be. Outside, the last trick-or-treaters drifted home, their bright costumes swallowed by the Halloween dark. Fast food chains had slowly strangled her business until Harper's Kitchen stood like a monument to a dying way of life. Diana locked up, turned off the last light, and stepped into the cold. For a while, she just walked. Not home, not anywhere in particular, just far enough that the silence of Harper's Kitchen couldn't reach her. The night air bit at her cheeks, sharp and clean. She passed 2 shuttered shops and an empty bus stop before turning down Maple Avenue. At the corner of Maple Avenue, 2 figures huddled against a brick wall beneath a threadbare blanket decorated with faded Halloween pumpkins, clearly scavenged from someone's trash. An elderly man held a small girl close, his arms wrapped around her as if trying to keep the world away. The girl wore a torn princess costume, probably found in a donation bin, her eyes dull with exhaustion and hunger. Diana slowed, recognizing something in their fragile stillness, the shape of people who had nowhere left to go. The girl stirred, her voice barely more than a whisper carried by the wind. "Grandpa, my hands don't feel anything anymore. Are we going to die?" She paused, her breath trembling. I just wanted some candy tonight." The words rooted Diana to the spot. It was Halloween. A night when children should be home counting their candy, not sitting on a sidewalk with empty hands and empty stomachs. She stood staring at them, 2 forgotten souls clinging to each other as though love was the only thing left keeping them alive. Something inside her cracked. She had felt her own despair gnawing at her for months, but this was worse. She still had walls, a roof, 4 burners that still worked. These 2 had nothing. A memory rose, quiet and unbidden, her mother standing by the stove on another cold night, long ago, draping her old cardigan around a neighbor's shoulders. "No one should be cold if you can help it," she'd said simply. Diana hadn't thought of that moment in years, until now. She stepped closer, her boots crunching against fallen leaves, and spoke in a voice as gentle as she could manage. "You don't have to be out here tonight," she said gently, nodding toward the dim sign a few doors down. "That's my place, Harper's Kitchen. It's closed now, but the stove still works. Both of you can come in and warm up, and I think I have some candy left from tonight." The man's arms tightened around the girl, his chin lifting in defiance, suspicion flashing in his eyes. "We don't need charity," he murmured, his voice clear and proud. Diana exhaled slowly, her breath visible in the cold October air. She wanted to argue, to tell him it wasn't charity, it was just human decency. But before she could, the girl stirred again, her wide eyes flicking between her grandfather and Diana. And this time, her small voice carried a plea she couldn't hide. "Please, Grandpa, I'm so cold, and it's Halloween. Everyone else got treats tonight." The man's shoulders sagged, his resolve crumbling under the weight of that fragile voice. He gave the smallest nod, almost imperceptible, but it was enough. Diana extended her arm, and led them across the street, past a carved pumpkin on her doorstep, whose candle had burned out hours ago. When she unlocked the door and pushed it open, the warmth of the restaurant spilled out, a thin refuge against the autumn night's bite. She guided them to a booth near the heater, then slipped into the kitchen. Her hands moved without thought, chopping, stirring, heating broth, the rhythm of survival she knew too well. While the soup heated, she found a plastic pumpkin bucket she'd filled with candy for trick-or-treaters and brought it to the girl. "Happy Halloween, sweetheart. Pick whatever you want." The girl's eyes went wide with wonder, as though Diana had offered her treasure. With trembling hands, she selected 3 pieces of candy, handling them like precious jewels. "You can take more," Diana said gently. "Take as much as you want." The girl looked at her grandfather, who nodded, tears in his eyes. She took 5 more pieces, carefully placing them in the pocket of her tattered costume. As the scent of simmering broth filled the small restaurant, the old man sat stiffly, his hands folded on the table. The girl leaned her head against his shoulder, her eyelids heavy with exhaustion. "She's my granddaughter," the old man said quietly, as if afraid the silence might swallow him. "Emma," he hesitated, then added almost as an afterthought, "and I'm Walter." Diana turned, surprised by the softness in his tone. "I'm Diana," she said gently. "Diana Harper, a good name," Walter said with a faint nod, as if tasting the weight of it. "We've been moving around a bit," he added after a pause. "It's been hard finding steady work." He said nothing more, and Diana didn't press. She could see enough: the exhaustion, the worn clothes, the shadows under his eyes that spoke of nights spent without shelter. When she carried out the soup, she placed it gently before them as if setting down an offering. The girl's eyes lit up, her hands wrapping clumsily around the spoon, slurping greedily while the man hesitated, then finally took a cautious sip. He closed his eyes, exhaling softly, and whispered, "You still simmer it instead of boil it," he murmured without thinking, then seemed to regret saying it. "It's really good," he added quickly. Diana blinked, surprised by the precision of the comment, but said nothing. The man looked away, his eyes distant, as though remembering another kitchen, long ago. Diana leaned against the counter, her chest easing for the first time that night, as she watched them eat. But when the bowls were empty and silence returned, she knew the truth. Sending them back into the snow would be like sending them to their deaths. She cleared her throat, gesturing toward the back hallway. "There's a storage room behind the kitchen," she said quietly. "There's a couch, some blankets, not much, but it's warmer than the street. Stay here tonight." The man looked up sharply, his eyes shining with unshed tears, his mouth opening as though to refuse. But the girl tugged his sleeve, eyes pleading. He swallowed hard, nodded once, and whispered, "Thank you." Diana turned off the lights, leaving only the soft glow from the kitchen lamp. As she climbed the narrow stairs to the small apartment above the restaurant, exhaustion pressed down on her, but it was a different kind than before. Not the hollow ache of failure, but the heavy warmth of having done something that mattered. Her apartment was modest: a single bed, a desk, and a window that overlooked the quiet street below. She changed into her worn nightgown, and stood for a moment at the window, looking down at the flickering neon sign of Harper's Kitchen. Through the glass, she could see a faint light still burning in the dining room. She imagined the old man and the girl settling under blankets, the little one finally warm, her breathing evening out as sleep claimed her. Diana smiled to herself, a tired, genuine smile she hadn't felt in months. She whispered into the stillness, "Sleep well, little one." For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel entirely alone. The worry about bills, about tomorrow, about the future, all of it was still there, waiting. But tonight, the silence no longer felt empty. It felt full of breath, of warmth, of fragile hope. She turned off the lamp and lay down, letting the faint hum of the heater and the quiet rhythm of the city lull her to sleep. The morning light crept through the windows of Harper's Kitchen, falling across the tables still decorated with paper bats and orange streamers from yesterday's half-hearted Halloween decorations. Outside, the street was littered with candy wrappers and smashed pumpkins, the aftermath of the night's celebrations. Inside, something was different. When Diana unlocked the door and stepped in, expecting the same dim, cluttered room she had left the night before, she froze. The place was spotless, every chair was tucked neatly beneath the tables. The Halloween decorations had been carefully straightened. The windows, once cloudy with smudges, gleamed in the weak morning sunlight. Even the counter, where bills had piled up like a curse, stood clear, the papers stacked in neat piles. The floor looked as though someone had scrubbed every inch. Diana stood at the doorway, her breath caught in her throat. This was not how she had left it. She set her keys down slowly, her calloused fingers brushing against the counter, and listened. From the back room came the rustle of fabric and the faint voice of a child, singing a Halloween song. She walked toward the storage room, her boots sounding heavy against the clean floor. When she pushed the door open, she saw them. The old man was on his knees folding rags with steady hands. Beside him, the girl sat on a stool still wearing the princess costume from last night, her small legs swinging, her head bent over a scrap of paper. She was using an orange crayon, probably from a kid's menu. The girl looked up the moment she saw Diana, her face lit up with joy. "Look," she cried, holding the paper out with both hands. "We cleaned everything. Grandpa said we shouldn't leave a mess after someone helps us, and I made you a picture. It's a pumpkin. See, that's you, and that's Grandpa, and that's me. We're all in the restaurant, and everyone's happy." The old man rose slowly, brushing dust from his pants. His eyes met Diana's with a steadiness that carried both pride and apology. "We were going to leave before you opened," he said quietly. "Didn't want to trouble you any longer." Diana glanced around again at the gleaming tables, the sunlight spilling across the clean floor. "You did all this?" He nodded. "Couldn't just sleep here and walk away. You gave us warmth. The least we could do was return it." Diana studied him, the careful way he stood, the worn shoes, the trembling in his hands he tried to hide. "You and the girl," she said softly. "You've been on your own for a while, haven't you?" He hesitated, then sighed. "Since spring." His voice was rough, not from age but from use. "My daughter, Emma's mother, and her husband, there was an accident. My wife and I took Emma in after that. Then not long after, my wife got sick, lung cancer. We sold the house trying to keep up with the treatments. She didn't make it." He paused, looking down at the small girl, who was now tracing circles on the floor with her crayon. "After that, the bills didn't stop. I lost everything else in the space of a summer. Been moving west ever since. I heard Portland had shelters that might take families, so we kept walking. Guess this is as far as we got." The silence that followed was heavy but gentle. Diana's chest ached. She thought of her mother's frail hands stirring soup, the hospital smell that clung to her hair. She understood too well what it meant to lose someone, and keep moving because stopping hurt worse. She swallowed hard. "You don't have to go," she said finally. "Not yet anyway." Walter frowned, wary. "You've done enough already." "It's not charity," Diana said, her voice firmer than she felt. "It's work. You clearly know how to clean better than I do." She forced a small smile. "I can't pay much, honestly. I can't pay at all. But if you stay, there'll be food and a warm place to sleep. That's something." Walter's lips parted, as if to refuse, but no words came. Instead he looked down, then at Emma, who was watching Diana with wide, uncertain eyes. "Would you like that, sweetheart?" Diana asked. Emma nodded eagerly. "We could help. Grandpa's really good at fixing things, and I can draw menus." That made Diana laugh, a sound that startled even her. "Then it's settled," she said. "Welcome to Harper's Kitchen. I can't promise much, but we'll figure it out." Walter bowed his head slightly, gratitude softening the deep lines of his face. "You have no idea what this means," he said. Diana did, more than he knew. For the first time in months, she felt the restaurant breathe again. The clink of dishes, the smell of coffee, the soft murmur of voices, all of it made the place feel alive, if only for a moment. Then came the knock. It was sharp, deliberate, the sound of reality returning. Through the window, Diana saw Patricia Crawford standing outside in her perfect wool coat, her expression colder than the morning air. Diana exhaled and squared her shoulders. "Stay here," she murmured to Walter and Emma, then went to open the door. Patricia stepped inside without waiting, her heels clicking across the floor. Her eyes swept the spotless room, taking in every sign of life. "Still playing house, Harper," she said coolly. "Maybe if you spent this much energy paying rent, you wouldn't be in this mess." "Good morning, Miss Crawford," Diana said evenly. Patricia ignored the greeting. 2 months behind. You have 2 weeks to make it right, or I'll put the building on the market." "I've been patient, but patience doesn't pay my bills." Diana's stomach tightened. "Please," she said, "this restaurant has been in my family for generations. I just need time." 2 weeks, Patricia repeated. "No exceptions." The door slammed behind her, leaving the sound of her heels echoing in the silence. Behind Diana, Emma's voice broke softly. "Is she taking our new home?" Diana turned and forced a smile that felt like breaking glass. "Not if I can help it, sweetheart. Not if I can help it." "I'm sorry you had to see that," Diana said. Walter sat across from her, $10,000, 2 weeks, that's difficult. Impossible, Diana corrected. Even if I'm packed every meal service between now and then, I couldn't make that much. Not with the few customers I have now. Walter was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Your soup last night, it was excellent." Diana looked up, confused by the subject change. "Thank you. No, I mean technically excellent. Your technique is sound, your seasoning is balanced, but it could be extraordinary." Walter leaned forward, intensity in his weathered face. "My wife Sarah was a chef, a real chef, trained at culinary school. She taught me everything about food, not just recipes, but the science behind them. How flavors work together, how to build complexity, how to make something that people remember long after they've eaten it." "Walter, I appreciate the compliment, but let me help you," Walter interrupted. "Let me show you what Sarah taught me. We could take your good soup and make it something people talk about, something worth coming across town for. Emma and I, we have nowhere else to be. Let us help you save this place. You saved us last night, let us return the favor." Diana stared at him. A homeless man was offering to help save her restaurant. It was absurd, desperate, impossible. It was also the only idea anyone had offered her. "Okay," she heard herself say, "show me." Over the next 3 days, Harper's kitchen filled with the hum of something it hadn't felt in months: purpose. Walter moved through the kitchen with a quiet precision that spoke of years spent behind a stove. He showed Diana things she'd never learned, not even in 3 decades of cooking. How to build flavor in layers, adding one note at a time instead of everything at once. How to caramelize vegetables until they gave up their sweetness. How to use herbs like punctuation, never letting one voice drown out another. He had her taste everything. Again, teaching her to listen to food, to know when it needed brightness, when it needed rest. It was like learning a new language, one she'd somehow always spoken but never truly understood. On the second day, as the pale winter light slanted through the kitchen window, Walter reached into the pocket of his threadbare coat. He pulled out a small glass jar, its label worn smooth. "Sarah's spice blend," he said softly. "Smoked paprika, cumin, coriander, and a touch of cinnamon. She made it herself. I've kept it with me since she died." He turned the jar in his hands for a moment, eyes distant. "Couldn't bring myself to use it, until now." He added a pinch to the soup simmering on the stove. The air changed instantly, warm, rich, alive. Diana leaned closer, inhaling deeply, and closed her eyes. "Oh my God," she whispered. Walter smiled, a small wistful thing that seemed to thaw years off his face. "It's still your mother's soup," he said, "but now it has a story in every spoonful." They worked side by side for hours, adjusting, tasting, refining, until the kitchen smelled of autumn and memory. Emma helped too, serious and focused, her tiny hands steady as she measured spices under Walter's watchful eye. By the 3rd night, they had created something extraordinary. Not just a soup, but a feeling, warmth you could taste. "We should call it something special," Emma said, tapping her crayon against her chin. Diana glanced at Walter. "Harper's Harvest Soup," she said. "A mix of my mother's tradition and everything you and Sarah created." Walter's eyes shimmered. Sarah would have loved that name. She always said the best food came from combining stories, not recipes. That night, after Emma had fallen asleep on the couch in the storage room, Diana sat alone in her office, staring at the register drawer. There was barely $100 left inside. The rational part of her said save it, but when she looked at Emma's torn princess dress drying by the heater, reason lost. The next morning, she walked down to the thrift shop on Maple, and spent the last $60 she had, half of what was left to her name, on a tiny yellow coat, a knitted sweater, and a pair of mittens that didn't match. When she returned, Emma's face lit up as if the sun had followed Diana through the door. "Are those for us?" Diana set the paper bag on the counter. "They're not new," she said gently, "but they're warmer than what you've got." Walter started to shake his head. "We can't." "Yes you can," Diana said firmly, her voice leaving no room for argument. "Everyone who works here gets a uniform. Those are yours." Emma twirled in her new coat, a little big, but perfect in every way. Walter tried on the sweater. The yarn stretched thin but soft, and for a moment he looked 10 years younger. Diana smiled, and for the first time since she'd met them, she didn't see pity between them. She saw family. That night, After they went to sleep, she sat alone at the counter, watching the neon sign flicker in the window. The restaurant was still quiet, the bills still unpaid, but something in her chest had shifted. For the first time in months, she felt purpose instead of fear. Maybe saving this place wasn't about money anymore. Maybe it was about people. The following morning, she woke before dawn. The thought had been growing quietly in her mind all night, a wild and possible idea. If people wouldn't come inside, she'd bring the kitchen out to them. She cooked one enormous pot of the new soup, the last of her best ingredients, and set a folding table just outside the restaurant window. On a sheet of cardboard, she scrawled with a black marker, "Free soup, warm your heart this season." Emma stood beside her in her new yellow coat, cheeks pink from the cold, calling out with the enthusiasm only a child could muster, "Come try our harvest soup, it's free." The first passers-by hesitated. A businessman in an expensive overcoat stopped, skeptical. "What's the catch?" he asked. "No catch," Diana said, "just soup, and I hope you'll remember us." He accepted a cup. After the first sip, his expression changed. "This tastes like my grandmother's kitchen," he murmured. "How did you?" But Diana only smiled. "Secret recipe." Others followed, a construction worker, a postal clerk, a young mother with her toddler. Soon a small crowd had gathered, drawn not just by the smell, but by the warmth radiating from the scene itself. "This is incredible," the young mother said, cradling her child. "What's in this?" "Love," Emma said from behind the table, her eyes bright. "Miss Diana puts love in everything she makes." The woman laughed, but something softened in her face, that fragile look of someone remembering what kindness felt like. She came back that afternoon with 3 friends. They filled the little restaurant, ordering soup, sandwiches and coffee. Laughter returned to the space like it had just been waiting for permission. When they left, one of them hugged Diana. "Thank you," she said. "I haven't felt this good in months. It's not just the food, it's this place. It feels like coming home." Diana stood at the door long after they'd gone, watching the last traces of sunlight reflect off the clean windows. Inside, Walter was washing dishes while Emma hummed softly, drawing another picture on a napkin, 3 figures under a glowing sign that read Harper's Kitchen. Diana looked at them, her throat tightening. For the first time she understood what her mother had meant all those years ago. Food could fill a stomach. But love filled a room. Word began to spread through the neighborhood and then beyond. People posted photos on social media with captions like "Found the most amazing soup in the city" and "This little restaurant has something special." Food bloggers started showing up, initially skeptical but leaving as believers. By the end of the week, Harper's Kitchen had more customers than it had seen in months. People came specifically for the soup, but they stayed for the atmosphere. The surge of customers didn't erase Diana's debt, but it changed everything. For the first time in months, she had cash left in the register after paying the week's bills. When Patricia Crawford stopped by unannounced that Friday, she found the restaurant full, every table occupied, laughter spilling into the street. Diana handed her an envelope with half the overdue rent, saying quietly, "It's not everything, but it's honest." Patricia hesitated, her eyes flicking toward the line of waiting customers. For a long second, she seemed to weigh numbers in her head. 2 more months, she said finally. "Let's see if this miracle of yours holds." She turned to leave but paused at the door. Through the window she watched a group of strangers sharing soup, laughing like old friends. Something in her expression softened, the faintest crack in years of polished distance. "You might just pull this off, Harper," she murmured, almost to herself. Then she stepped out into the cold, the sound of laughter following her down the street. Walter's quiet presence as he carefully washed dishes visible through the kitchen window. Emma's infectious joy as she brought water to tables and chatted with customers about her drawings. And Diana's genuine care, the way she remembered names and asked about people's lives, made everyone feel seen. One elderly woman, Mrs. Patterson, became a regular almost immediately. She had silver hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She told Diana one afternoon, "I lost my husband 6 months ago. I've been eating frozen dinners alone every night since then, watching the walls close in. But when I come here, I don't feel so lonely anymore. It's like I have family again." Diana felt tears prick her eyes. This was what her mama had always talked about. Food wasn't just sustenance, it was connection. It was love made tangible, the thread that wove people together into community. Across the street, the lights of Dominic's bistro glowed cold and perfect behind their glass facade. Victor Dominic had built his reputation on precision, flawless service, exquisite plating, exclusivity that made people feel privileged to be there. For years he had ruled the neighborhood's dining scene, and when Harper's Kitchen began to fade, he had watched with quiet satisfaction. In his mind, there wasn't room for both warmth and wealth, only one could survive. But now, crowds lined up outside Harper's Kitchen every evening, their laughter spilling across the street into his empty dining room. His satisfaction curdled into rage. The reviews he once owned now praised Diana Harper by name. His investors whispered about heart and community, words Victor despised because they couldn't be measured on a balance sheet. One night, standing by the window of his empty restaurant, Victor watched another group cross the street. "Find out what they're serving," he said. Lisa, his manager, returned 20 minutes later with a styrofoam container. "It's called Harper's Heritage Soup," she said flatly. Victor opened it. Steam curled into the air, carrying a smell that hit him with a strange, disarming warmth. He tasted it, intending to sneer, but the flavor stopped him cold. It was layered, alive, familiar and haunting. It tasted like memory. He set the spoon down, his expression hardening. "This," he said quietly, "is a problem." "What do you want me to do?" Lisa asked, her voice carefully neutral. Victor leaned back in his chair, his mind working through possibilities. He had not built his restaurant empire, small as it was, by playing fair. "Find out everything you can about their operation. I want to know their suppliers, their recipes if possible, their weaknesses. If Harper's Kitchen is going to steal my customers, I need to know how to stop it." Over the following weeks, Victor watched and schemed. He noticed that Diana ordered her produce from Miller's Farm, a local supplier known for quality and fair prices. Victor made a phone call. Tom Miller was a good man, but he was also struggling with his own debts, equipment failures, and the general hardship of small farming. "Tom," Victor said smoothly when the farmer answered. "Victor Dominic here. I have a proposition for you. I want to offer you an exclusive contract. I'll pay you double what Harper's Kitchen pays, guaranteed orders, consistent money. All I ask is that you prioritize my orders, and well, if Diana Harper's deliveries get delayed, or if the quality isn't quite up to your usual standards, I'll understand." Tom hesitated. "Victor, I've been selling to Diana's family for 20 years. Her mother was good to me when times were tough. And I'm sure Diana appreciates that loyalty," Victor said, his voice dropping to a more threatening tone. "But loyalty doesn't pay bills, Tom. Your equipment is failing, your farm is barely breaking even. I'm offering you stability. Unless you'd prefer to explain to your wife why you turned down guaranteed income for sentiment." The silence on the other end of the line stretched out. Finally, Tom said quietly, "What exactly are you asking me to do?" "Nothing illegal," Victor assured him. "Just prioritize my orders. If that means Harper's Kitchen sometimes gets last pick of the produce, well, that's just business, isn't it?" Tom Miller, struggling with mounting debts and the fear of losing his family's farm, reluctantly agreed. Victor leaned back in his chair, satisfied. It wasn't personal, he told himself. Just business. The weak always gave way to the strong. He convinced himself that was the end of it, a simple advantage in a competitive market. But deep down, a quieter voice whispered that it wasn't enough. Within weeks, Diana found herself receiving inferior produce. The quality of her food suffered. The beautiful fresh vegetables that had made their soup shine were replaced with limp carrots, bruised tomatoes, and lettuce that was already turning brown. Not spoiled enough to complain about, but far from the premium quality she'd always received. Customers began to notice. The soup, while still good, lost some of its magic. Diana called Miller repeatedly, her frustration growing. "Tom, what's going on? I've never had problems with you before. The last 3 deliveries have been terrible." "I'm sorry, Diana," Tom said, and he sounded genuinely apologetic. "We're having truck problems, supplier issues. It's been a difficult season," but something in his voice didn't ring true. Diana had known Tom her whole life. She could tell when he was hiding something. "Something's wrong," Walter said one night, as they examined a crate of vegetables that looked like they'd been sitting in a warehouse for a week. His experienced hands sorted through them, salvaging what he could. "This isn't like Miller, he's always been reliable." Someone's interfering with our suppliers. Who would do that? Emma asked from her perch on a stool, where she was supposed to be doing homework but was instead watching the adults with worried eyes. Diana looked out the window at Dominic's bistro, its lights gleaming in the darkness, its dining room conspicuously empty. I have an idea, she said grimly. But suspecting and proving were two different things. Diana couldn't afford to make accusations without evidence. All she could do was find new suppliers, which meant higher costs, less profit, and produce that wasn't quite as good because she couldn't afford the premium sources anymore. The financial pressure that had just begun to ease came crashing back down. Then things got worse. Health inspectors showed up 3 times in 2 weeks, far more frequently than normal. They were polite but thorough, examining every corner of the restaurant with exacting detail. Each time they found minor violations. A loose tile here that could be a tripping hazard. A temperature gauge on one refrigerator that was 1 degree off the recommended range. A small crack in a wall that could harbor bacteria. Nothing serious, but enough to require immediate fixes and costly repairs. Each violation came with paperwork and deadlines, and the implicit threat that failure to comply immediately would result in closure. This doesn't make sense, Diana told Walter as she wrote yet another check to a repair service, watching her carefully rebuilt reserves drain away. I've been running this place for years, we've never had this many inspections. My mother ran it for 30 years before me and never saw an inspector more than once a year. Walter's expression was grim as he studied the latest inspection report. Someone's reporting you, Diana. Someone who knows exactly what to report to cause you maximum trouble without being obviously false. Someone who wants to see you fail. Diana felt her exhaustion turning into anger, hot and bright in her chest. She had worked so hard, had finally started to see hope, and now someone was actively trying to destroy everything she'd built. Not through fair competition, but through sabotage and manipulation. The final blow came when Diana discovered that someone had been posting negative reviews online. Detailed, convincing reviews claiming that Harper's Kitchen had made them sick. One said they'd gotten food poisoning from the soup. Another claimed to have found hair in their sandwich. A third described the restaurant as dirty and unsafe with obvious health code violations. The reviews were clearly fake, written from newly created accounts with no other activity, no profile pictures, no history of reviewing other establishments. But they damaged the restaurant's reputation nonetheless. Potential customers saw the 1-star ratings and decided to eat elsewhere. Diana tried to respond, to explain, but the reviews kept coming faster than she could address them. One evening, as Diana was closing up, feeling beaten down by the accumulated weight of sabotage, Victor Dominic himself walked through the door. He was tall and impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Diana made in a month. His smile was cold and calculated. The smile of a shark. Diana Harper, he said smoothly, his voice carrying the confidence of someone who had never truly struggled. I've been meaning to stop by. Try the famous soup everyone's talking about. His tone made it clear he thought famous was a generous description. What do you want, Victor? Diana asked flatly, too tired for pleasantries or pretense. Straight to business, I respect that, he said looking around the restaurant with thinly veiled contempt. His eyes lingered on Emma's drawings on the wall, on the mismatched chairs Diana had collected over the years, on the worn but clean floors. You're struggling again. Everyone can see it. Your supplier problems, your health code violations, your terrible online reviews. It must be exhausting. Fighting so hard just to keep this place afloat. Diana's hands clenched into fists at her sides. Get to the point. I'm willing to buy you out, Victor said, spreading his hands as though offering her a gift. A fair price for your recipes and your customer list. You can walk away with some dignity intact and enough money to start over somewhere else. Somewhere without so much competition. And I'll take this space off your hands, expand my operations. It's a win for everyone. This place isn't for sale, Diana said through gritted teeth, every word costing her effort to keep her voice level. Victor's smile widened, showing too many teeth. Everything's for sale, Diana. It's just a matter of price, and right now your price is dropping by the day. How much longer can you sustain these losses? How long before Patricia Crawford loses patience again? Think about it. You can end this struggle right now, take my offer, or watch everything crumble around you. He paused at the door, looking back with mock concern. Oh, and Diana, those health inspections. They're going to keep coming. And I imagine your supply problems aren't going to improve, just something to consider. He left, and Diana stood in the empty restaurant, shaking with rage and fear. That night, Walter found her sitting in the dark restaurant, tears streaming down her face, staring at the bills spread across a table. He's going to win, she whispered, her voice broken. I can't fight him. He has everything I don't have.
Money, influence, and the willingness to destroy people to get what he wants.
Walter sat down beside her, his weathered hand covering hers. Listen to me, he said quietly. I've lived long enough to see empires rise and fall. I've seen strong men crumble and quiet people endure.
Oh, Victor has money, yes.
He has influence, yes. But he doesn't have what you have. What do I have? Diana asked bitterly. Bills I can't pay. A restaurant that's falling apart. A daughter who deserves better than this. You have people who believe in you, Walter said firmly. You have a community that you've fed and cared for. You have integrity that Victor can never buy. And you have the truth. The truth always comes out, Diana. Always, we just have to hold on long enough to see it. Diana wanted to believe him, but the weight of it all felt crushing. She looked at the empty restaurant, at the walls that held so many memories of her mother, at Emma's drawings that brightened every corner. She thought about giving up, about taking Victor's offer and walking away. It would be so much easier. But then she thought about what her mother would say. About how Rose Harper had faced her own battles, her own dark moments, and had never surrendered the dream of a place where everyone was welcome. What do I do? Diana whispered. You keep cooking. Walter said simply. You keep feeding people. You keep being kind. And you let the universe handle the rest, because kindness, real kindness, it has a power that cruelty can never match. It spreads, it multiplies. And eventually it wins. The next morning, Diana posted on social media, not a complaint, not an accusation, but a simple truth. She wrote about her mother's dream, the restaurant's history, and the struggles that had nearly broken her. She didn't name Victor, but she described the pattern: delayed supplies, sudden health inspections, and a flood of suspicious online posts that accused Harper's Kitchen of being dirty or unsafe. I don't know if Harper's Kitchen will survive, she wrote, but I know we've tried to do right by our community. We've fed people when they were hungry, whether they could pay or not. We've treated every customer like family. And if this is the end, I want you all to know it's been an honor to serve you. Thank you for 30 years of memories. She posted it and went back to work, expecting nothing. But something extraordinary happened. The post went viral, not just locally but nationwide. People shared it, commented, and expressed outrage at what was happening. A food blogger with over 1 million followers published a detailed piece about Harper's Kitchen, noting the suspicious timing of its troubles and the signs of deliberate sabotage. The article mentioned Victor's name and his competing restaurant. Soon after, the local news picked up the story. Reporter Sarah Reed arrived with a camera crew. Tell me everything, she said. And Diana, with Walter at her side and Emma peeking from the kitchen, told the truth about the supplier issues, the endless inspections, and the smear campaign online. She recounted Victor's visit, his threats, his offer to buy her out. Do you have proof? Sarah asked. No, Diana admitted. But I have records, dates, invoices, inspection reports, and I have a community that knows who I am and what this place stands for. That night, the story aired. It was powerful and raw, painting a clear picture of a small restaurant being slowly crushed by greed and manipulation. The response was overwhelming. Donations poured in, 35,000 by morning, 120,000 by week's end. But it wasn't just money, it was people. Contractors volunteered to repair the place. Suppliers donated new kitchen equipment. Mrs. Patterson organized cleanup shifts with military precision. Big Jim and his crew refused to take payment.
You fed